This is Prevalent Arts, and welcome to part 5 of the Easy Affinity Designer Guide. This time I will show you how to set up animation frames in Affinity Designer. Disclaimer: you cannot create actual animation in Affinity. This tutorial will show you how to set up the frames for animation. For the actual animation part, you will need a separate program on the side. The type of animation I will show you is the traditional stop frame, but you might be familiar with two other types as well. These types are called keyframe animation and limited animation. Keyframe is the process of automatically creating frames in between others. In this example of the fish, I will have a frame of it on the far right and another on the far left. Just by changing the timing on the video timeline, a particular amount of in-betweens are automatically added. You may have noticed this common style. I can even add betweens of scale, rotation, deformation, and opacity. There are also usually pivot points on the objects. Maybe for this example, the fish's tail might move back and forth separately from the main keyframing movement.
Help, it's a spider! Ah!
The other kind is called limited animation. This means different groups of objects which are reused to create an animated process. A character may consist of different head parts, body parts, or arm parts, which are all reused in different orders. This is common for sprite work or game design.
Ha 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 ha!
Okay, now without further ado, let's get into it. This video will be in two parts. This part will be on an idea I thought of called steady animation. Steady animation will be the process in which different elements animate while other elements stay the same. And then the next part will be on full animation, whereas everything animates. So in this video, part 1 on steady animation, I'm going to animate this character Malapax, the character creator. And these are not the two figures I will be animating. These are just reference images. So I will create a new layer, and I will call it Frame 1. Now I'm going to create a new layer under that, and I'm going to have it called Sketch. The beginning process is always the longest, but once you have a character, it gets easier to animate. So first, I'm actually not going to use the pixel tools. I'm going to use the vector tools to create a little sketch. Now for this pose, I want him to be standing on a cliff looking out with his cape and horns blowing. So his cape and horns will be the part that's moving. But first, I have to come up with just a little bit of a sketch, so I have the anatomy correct. Malapax has a long head. And now I'm going to have his body, which will be separate from his cape. His body and cape are going to be in two different layers, but I'm going to be doing that later on. And now you see he kind of gets squawny down below, so. And like I said, the beginning is the longest process. Once you have the frames up, once you have one frame up, it gets easier to figure out later on. And don't worry about closing, this is just a basic sketch, and see I'm not even closing up the paths. Okay, I don't want to spend all day on this sketch, but just showing you that this is how it would start, and okay, I think I like the way this sketch looks now. So now I'm going to do the real thing, and I'm going to separate each body part in different layers. So one will be head. Although the head isn't going to animate, but the horns will. So the horns will be in a separate layer. Have the cape go above the body layer. Now, for the ones that are going to be animated, I'm going to right click, click Properties, And I'm going to change the blue to maybe a red. Alright, now if I look at the layers, I'll see, okay, it's just these two that needs to be animated. So now I'm going to go in and start drawing. So for a head, first let me lower the opacity on the sketch layer. Now I'm going to give it a lock. Alright, so for a head, I'm going to start off by doing the sunglasses, and I'm going to turn snapping off. Now, drawing in vector is usually tough, and so animating in vector would be tough too. But you'll see that I'm going to start drawing off in open paths. Now, does it mean that it should do it this way? No. But these paths are not going to stay open, and I'm just doing them for the time being, and then later on I'm going to convert them into closed paths. Just like the drawing I made on King Babula. Remember that video? Well, at first, I drew everything in closed paths, and then I converted them. I did everything in open paths, and then I converted them to closed paths. So that's what I'm doing here. Okay, now for here, I'm going to leave a gap space open because the horns are going to be in another layer. Okay, now I'm going to select these two curves, click join. Alright, now those two are connected. Let's see. Oh, now I want to join those two. So what I'm going to do, bring that closer. Okay, now join. So see, right now this is a partially closed path, and we're going to keep it a partially closed path. You don't always have to work in closed paths, as long as you can apply color easily. And since I'm going to have a horn here on a layer behind, yeah, so I'm going to bring the horns layer behind the head layer. I want to leave this partially open so I can do that. Now I'm going to select those two, join. Oh, dang it, I did it again. Those two endpoints were closer together than those two endpoints. But not any longer. Join. Now for this, I'm going to add a node right here, break curve, and close. Close. Now I'm going to cut, paste inside. I don't want to talk more on the drawing process. Now I want to get into the animation process. Okay, now before we add our color, I'm going to show you something that you shouldn't use when you're doing animation. You shouldn't use the color tab. We're going to be using the swatches tab, and we are going to create global colors. Okay, now I'm going to create a new palette. So I'm going to click up here, and I'm going to say add document palette. You can add application palette, document palette, or system palette. I'm not sure what system palette is, but application palette means anytime you open Designer, you will have that same palette, but I only want that palette for this particular document. So I'm going to add new palette, and I'm going to rename this rename palette Malapax. Right, so this will be Malapax's color palette. Now, before you start applying your color, creating your palette should be the first thing you do. You can either create any swatch or you create a global swatch, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to double click on this first swatch. I'm going to take this magnifier and want to get this shade of purple. And now click this button. Alright. Now, if I click his cape, for example, and actually I'll click all the spots in which there will be purple on him. Alright, now everything is deselected. Now if I double click this again, I can change all the colors on him at once. So the global colors is definitely good for animation in case you want to change the color variety. However, if I select his head first and I don't know, say I do this, then I create a global swatch from that color. Now trying to double click this and change color that way, it won't work. That's why you need to create the palette first, and then you select an object, and then click the global swatch, and now you can change it. Okay, I'm done with the color. I'll just give him the cape. Oh wait, forgot this part. There we go. Okay, now before I create the next frame, I'm going to add some shading to this character. And I'm going to be creating some pixel shading. So I'm going to take pixel layers and I'm going to clip them onto vector objects. So first I'm going to select the head layer. And now under here, I see that this is selected. And now this is selected. So I'm going to create a new pixel layer and I'm going to clip it right under that vector curve. So now I'm going to go into the pixel persona, take the brush tool, and see if I just hover my mouse over, it's only this region of the head because that is the vector object I'm going to be clipping. But first, I'm going to lower the opacity like way down, and I'm going to lower the brush size. So since I won't be, so if I brush, I won't be getting anything else other than the head. So, and you see that I have the brush stabilizer turned on. So I'm going to just do something like that. Now I'm going to go over the spot again, but more on the edge. Maybe a little over here. And you'll see that I'm also going over this region too, because this part is also clipped under this purple vector object. Okay, I think this looks better. Yeah, put shading in all of the objects on him. So I'm going to remove this reference image, this one right here. And I'm going to move Malapax forward a little because his cape and horns will be blowing, so I don't want it to be too far out of the shot when they are blowing. Now, there's one last thing I'm going to do before I create the next frame, and I said that already, but I forgot about something. I'm going to just create a shape for the background, not covering him, so I'm going to send it behind. And I'm just going to have it white for now. Because later on, I'm going to go into the export persona and I'm going to create a slice on each of the layers, which will be each of the frames in this case. But if I didn't have something in the background, then each slice would be different sizes. For example, this would be a slice because it would be right against his body. And then when the cape is blowing, like say it, or why am I pointing my finger? It's not like you can see it. His cape would be around here, so this is where the next slice would be, so all the frames wouldn't be the same length. So I'm just having this white here for the background for now. I might put in a background later on, but I'm not going to show it for this video. Okay, now time for frame 2. Now I'm not going to redraw everything, I'm going to just duplicate it. I'm going to name this frame 2. So I'm going to just hide frame 1. And now over here I see horns and cape are the two layers that need to be animated. So I'm going to create a new layer on top of this, right above it. This is going to be the new horns layer. And now this, I'm going to lower the opacity. And I'll give this a lock for now. Okay, now I'm going to start drawing the next frame. Okay, so with the horn, see this part is coming up, so this part has to go past this part. Otherwise, his horns would change proportion, and we don't want that. And I noticed when I animated other works, I did um, have things unproportionate, and that it's very easy to do that. So just want to make sure everything is aligned correctly. And you know what I'm going to do here. Add a note here, break, now join. And I'm going to send it behind. So when I add color, this doesn't go away. This is in front now. Actually, you know what, for this, I'm going to unlock that. And I'm going to just copy that and I'll lock it again. Now paste in here. I'm going to turn it a little. Wait a minute. No, it would turn this way. Aha. Okay, so one horn is done. So I want to add shading to this one too because I can't just have the shading go away. So I'm going to lower the opacity just a little, just so I can see where the shading is on the previous horn, which I'm going to delete later on after I'm finished with that horn. Oh, and I probably should have told you earlier, but you want to remember where you have the opacity or flow at, because if you have it at a different level, then it will mess things up later on. I didn't even think to say that. Whoa, 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 whoa. That was naughty, very naughty. Alright, well, probably doesn't look too good right now, but the wind is starting to blow it. So, I don't know, I'll just see how things come out. I am going to select this streak and have it come out a little so it looks like it's bending, kind of like an umbrella. The wind blows it up, and then the person who grabs it turns into Mary Poppins. The wind just takes him. I don't know what I'm talking about. See, it's kind of like the wind is pushing those streaks a little. Alright, so I'm going to just keep trying this. And the thing I like about Vector is that it looks a little off, so I'm going to push this back just a little so not too much is blown all at once. The wind is just starting to grab the horn. Okay, so I have the new horns. So I'm going to click the one below, delete it, and now I'm going to change the properties of this one, have this one be the new red one. And you would just keep doing this. So now I'm going to create the new cape layer, lower the opacity of this one, and I'm also going to hide his body layer since I don't really need it. I just need to know how the previous cape looks. Although there is one thing I'm going to do differently. I'm going to keep this part the same. So I'm going to select all objects, copy, and paste it in here. That's the only part that's going to stay the same. Oh, and anything you copy and paste, it will paste in the same position unless you move out of its area and then paste, then it will not paste in the same position. Alright, this is going to be a little tough to redraw this, but yeah, that's what I made this tutorial for. And again, see how this part comes out? This part moves to the right, so this part of the cape needs to move to the right as well. I'm going to have like the wind kind of lift this point of the cape as like a Batman looking cape. Only Batman doesn't have diamonds inside his cape because Malpax is awesome. Malpax, the tricky jester. And now this part, you can tell that this part sticks out because of the lighter color. So kind of want to have this part of the cape appear as a bubble almost. So I think the right way to do that would be kind of like and then have this line go like that. I'm gonna have the cape fan out on this top area, so the bubble kind of pops, just like a weasel. Okay, it's been a long process, but I'm finally done. I'm gonna have 5 different frames and have them repeat. So this is frame 1, that'd be 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it goes down. And it's a good thing it's a good thing I used global colors, because let's say I want to change the purple on him again. Just double click purple and let's change it to a dark blue. Notice how it also changes the shading. Okay, now the final step, we're going to export these. So I'm going to go to Export Persona, and I want to be under Layers first, not Slices, but the Layers tab. I'm going to select all of these and say Create a slice out of all the layers. Now go into the Slices tab, and normally this would be checked off, but I already unchecked it earlier. So I'm going to uncheck that, and now I'm going to export all these slices. So Export, I'm going to put it here, Malapax test folder. Export.